Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, we are on location at Area Sales Manager Nolan Wilkens' farm to chat about managing high-yielding wheat in his West Central Illinois sales area. Hear about Nolan's own experience this past fall planting wheat in 15-inch rows. Find out what Merschman Soybean varieties farmers are growing in Nolan's area.
Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Lynn and Turk, and I'm going to let Lynn introduce our special guest for this week.
Yeah, so as everyone can see, we are off location today, visiting with Nolan Wilkens. So Nolan, do you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about your sales territory and what we got going on today?
Sure. So as Lynn said, my name is Nolan Wilkens. I cover 15 counties in Western Illinois here. As you can see, we're on our family farm here, and so I farm as well as take care of some Merschman Seeds dealers and customers.
So one of the reasons we wanted to come out today, and we got a little bit of B-roll ahead of time here, is we did a video with you, it's probably been about a year ago by now, and we were talking about the 15-inch wheat that you've been working on. So tell us just a little bit about why that you guys, I mean, you had planted wheat before, but just give us a brief synopsis of why that you are planting wheat again and some of the steps on what's making it successful.
Yep. So we wanted to go back to wheat to help with crop rotation and build organic matter. And Merschman Seeds has a ultra early line. We always used to plant wheat without the ultra early varieties. And like I mentioned in previous videos, we were always working on the 4th of July and had pretty low yields. We would have good yields, but we would give it away at the elevator with head scab and other diseases that we would battle, and not really much advancement in the wheat at that time, so we kind of gave up on it and have moved into it with the ultra early line. It lets us harvest earlier so we can get our double crop beans in, especially for that tougher acre where the corn and beans really don't make sense for us.
Right. So when we were out in the field earlier, we were looking at some wheat that wasn't necessarily in 15-inch rows. So walk us through the process and the reasons on why we're looking at this hatched pattern.
Sure. So it wasn't intended to be a crosshatch. I mean, every day is a learning experience on the farm. The planter at the time, we have a Kinsey 3600 bulk fill planter, no scales. So it's kind of a open the lids, guess how many bags are in there by the wheat size, and keep planting, adjust rate on the go to try to get what you need. I had looked at it several times, thought I was doing a pretty good job of trying to hit like a 140 pounds per acre seeding rate. Yep. Kept looking at it, thought it was okay. Well, I ended up being done with the field and didn't have anywhere near what I thought. I had 95 pounds, I think, I put on. And I remember calling you at the time. So for the wheat we were planting at the time, Binti, you said that wasn't enough per acre because it's not much of a tillering product. So I thought, well, better go back and double plant it. And our planter's a 15-inch planter. And I thought, this is a great way to narrow up my rows and get more like a drill scenario going on. So I backed into the corner, and this planter has RTK on it, or this tractor did. Backed into the corner, couldn't get we took off, everything was looking great, and then I looked up and it had dropped signal. And I'm like, well, that's pretty much par for the course.
Right. for that day anyway.
Yeah. So I fiddled with it, and as everybody's time is very valuable, I said, well, I'm just gonna put it at an angle and see how it looks. And between planter breakdowns and GPS and things like that, I think I was 2 days behind the first planting, which wasn't a big deal. And so now I ended up with a beautiful diamond pattern wheat field, and we have a lot of wheat out there. I have about 150 pounds per acre out there. So what I was shooting for at the end of the day, we got on.
Right. So when you're looking at that 15-inch, if that would have been the original planting, talk a little bit about the prop that's sitting in front of you.
Yeah, sure.
And what that takes to turn a normal 15-inch bean planter into a cereal green.
So what I have in front of me is a standard Kinsey brush meter with the black plate, this is your normal soybean plate.
60 cell.
60 cell, yep. And then all I do, because there's holes right here that the wheat or rye or whatever you're gonna plant will run out. So all we do is take a simple, what they call a backing plate. It's just a piece of aluminum with a foam on it. And we put that on, and there's our wheat planter. And that just goes in the planter like any other normal brush meter.
In the previous video that we talked about your double crop 15-inch rows, one of the reasons that you'd switch to that system is because you don't have a drill. Right?
Yep.
So, you're talking a 40-foot planter, how many acres per hour can you get done this direction versus if you were looking at a 15-foot drill or a 12-foot drill?
Oh man, without putting a pencil to it, it's
you're probably close to 30, aren't you?
You're setting the world on fire compared to a 12-foot drill.
You're
25, 30.
25, 30 acres an hour.
Yeah.
In comparison to half that, probably. So, no, that's really good. So, I have a little bit of the wheat that's sitting here in front of us, and we went out and kind of walked through one of my typical procedures. So we're looking at, I took a spot where we were looking at where the 15-inch and the 15-inch kind of overlapped and looked a lot closer to a 7.5. And you can see, Alex will overlay the video, but you can see basically what you do is you measure what distance that you cut off, and then you start counting tillers. And in that tiller count, each one of these individual little stems counts as a tiller. Now, not all of them will make heads, but what you're looking at is an extremely healthy stand. A lot of these individual seeds have put 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 tillers on that one. There's 4 on that one. There's 5 or 6 on that one. So we have a lot of tillers per plant, which when Nolan called me and asked me, at 90 pounds, what am I worried about? Which planting date is?
October 2nd.
October 2nd. So we're planting it at the right time. What am I worried about? So the products that we have that are on list varieties don't have the same proclivity to tiller as the ones that are the bearded varieties. Correct. Or the on varieties. So I get a little bit nervous, especially in the ultra early. You really want a lot of either tillers or seeds out there, and 90 pounds per acre would have put us at like, I gotta remember my seed size, but that would have put us at like 1 million, potentially less than 1 million seeds per acre, and we really want to be at that 1.5 million,
yep.
Right?
If I remember right, I was shooting for like 1.5,
yep.
Maybe even a little bit more, and that 90 pounds only got me like almost 1 million, so I was getting pretty nervous at that point on seeding rate.
Correct.
So,
and this year we aren't on your most productive farm, but we're on a little bit more productive farm than where we were at last year. So, what is your yield goal for what you're pushing here?
Well, I would love to raise 100+ bushel wheat with 40 to 50 bushel double crop beans. We used to put it on what I call moon dirt or glow in the dark dirt because we couldn't raise corn very well down there. I said, why don't we put it around home where it's not the best. The back 20 acres kind of drops off, which is where wheat needs to be. And so I think we're gonna hit it out of the park this year.
Right. So when I look at having 5 to 6 tillers on some of these and 3 to 4 on others, so we're not really looking at a plant that only has 1 or 2 tillers per seed. What do you think got us to where we are today, and what's your nitrogen program been so far this year?
Well, so I know in the past we've probably been pretty shy on nitrogen. It's kind of been a crop that I think Brett Ward said it the best, it's a me too crop. So we're putting it on the front burner. On February 25th, we were on our way to Jamaica, and I saw frozen ground coming in the future, and I called home and said, do you think we could get that wheat sprayed? And they ended up putting 90 pounds of nitrogen through 32, and then it has some thio in it, so we got another 12 pounds there, and then 26 pounds of sulfur in that thio as well. So we're at 102 pounds of nitrogen total right now, and I plan on adding 30 to 50 pounds more, depending on how it looks.
What did it have on in the fall?
Oh, it would have only had like 10, 12 pounds.
Gotcha. So when I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at my chart from Penn State, we are over, I'd have to do a little bit closer math, but we're probably at 140 tillers per foot of row, which is well above the needed average to get us to 100% of total yield. So what makes you, the next step of the process, I guess, is what's your plan to keep that wheat standing?
Yep. We'll use a product, Palisade. I know the Southern guys I've been talking, I've actually been leaning on our Southern ASMs quite a bit. You know, Brett and Greg and some of them guys down there, I kind of called them when we were going to pull this trigger, and we're going to use a product, Palisade, to keep it from lodging real bad.
So for the guys that are really pushing the nitrogen, because it's almost a 1-to-1. A lot of the super high yield producing guys that talk on YouTube and have different podcasts, it's almost a 1-to-1. So in order to get 140 pounds of nitrogen, you really have to push that nitrogen rate.
140 pounds.
140 bushel
the acre.
corn, yeah, you have to be at that like 140 pounds of nitrogen rate, and the sustainability is really usually the...
Your yield goal just went up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I think too, in Nolan's case, when we look at, you know, this particular one, he had a lot of plants that survived, so he just has a lot of mass out there with plants. You know, we talk about getting tillers, but he also has a lot of plants too to worry about, so we need to make sure that we're taking care of that all that across the board isn't getting too thick and matty and lodging. So
absolutely,
yeah.
So you adjust your nitrogen based on, if you have extra out there, give it a little extra and feed it, huh?
Right. Well, you can look at that at two different directions. When you have all that extra up front, so I can tell from the fall that the main tillers versus the ones that have came up since the fact, and you've gained a lot of tillers with that early application of nitrogen. Yes, so you do want to feed it, but the guys that aren't pushing the 100 plus, like what you're talking about, that 60 to 80 tillers per square foot is really the benchmark for average to above average yield. And I think what you're looking at is the potential for extraordinary yield.
Sure. Well, that's what we're going for. That's why we grow Merschman wheat.
And that planting date, from what we've seen this year, looking at wheat, I mean, anything that was planted in the month of October, we definitely have potential. As we get later into the fall as stuff was planted, it definitely seems like we left a little bit on the table by that planting date not being as early. And some of that has to do, I get, with cropping conditions coming out of the field and what fall was like. But, you know, all the stuff that we've looked at, October planting date, it's looking really, really good.
Right. We didn't have the same fall that we had the year before.
Correct.
Where we had all that warm weather stretching all the way out to it. So you are correct. I completely agree with you. You know, you can tell the difference between an October 1st planting date versus an October 15th planting date just by driving 65 mile an hour down the road in southeast Iowa.
Yep.
I think that's the guys that want to, in Nolan's case, you know, if you want to take wheat to that next level, we got to look at early planting date. Figure out your soybeans if you're going to come in behind soybeans, maybe bumping that maturity, because we just don't know in the fall what we're going to deal with. So being able to be gas pedal down on wheat is very important.
It's hard in the fall when it's game time and the combine's rolling and it's only like 2 or 3 of you on the farm. Well, I pull off and go plant wheat. It slows the harvest down, but if you really are serious about wheat, that's what you have to do. And it's tough. I mean, it really is, especially when it should take you a half a day to plant that. It takes you 2 with all the problems. I mean, that's just how it goes.
That's just the start of any planting season, really.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, you basically have 2 April 15ths in one year.
Yes.
A glutton for punishment, some would say.
Yep.
So Nolan, we're talking about soybean maturities. So what did you come in afterwards, or what have you found is a good soybean to lead into wheat? And then I'll second that. Then what are you looking at for a double crop afterwards?
Sure. Really, to come into wheat, like if you're going to take a field and put it into wheat in this location, I've just planted a normal like 3-6 around here is our sweet spot, and try to plant it in a timely manner, that soybean, so it comes off early enough to get your wheat in that October time frame, early October. And then for my double crop, I tried, if we remember from last time's video, I would double crop the beans and then plant wheat right after I'd harvest the beans. Well, I don't think I'm going to do that this year, so you could get away with a little longer season soybean. I did a 3-2 soybean after my double crop, or after my wheat. This year I'll probably do a 3-6 or 3-7 to try to gain a little more yield on the backside of that. So it's all really what you are trying to accomplish. If you want to go back to wheat, that's pretty intensive when you're trying to go back to wheat after your double crop beans. That's a lot of planting.
So Ben, when do you looking at the wheat now, what do you estimate his harvest date? You think he's going to be in line with what we think these ultra earlies will be?
Well, Nolan does have some of the acres of the Binti. The Binti was a soft launch, I guess you could call it. The Binti last year came off in it'd have been like the 17th or 16th of June with the planting date that he has. It was similar to where we were at last year. So if we have similar warm conditions through the month of May and June, I think we're right on track to be able to get a product off for sure the last half of June, no problem, way before the 4th of July.
And Nolan, you have mentioned before in that other video, but you are pretty aggressive as far as getting your wheat off and not necessarily letting it go to full maturity in the field.
Sure. That's not ideal. It's not, as you know, it's handling more wheat than you need to, but we can put it in the bin and throw a bunch of air on it or heat if needed like we did last time. So we'll combine it a little wet. The elevator that does take our wheat doesn't dock us too hard on moisture. They'll let you bring it in at 15 to 18%, so it doesn't need to be real dry.
But you pulled it off when last year?
Last year,
the KD15.
The date.
Yep.
It was June 28th, something like that, if I remember right. And it was.
And I think we can pick up a couple more days.
Yeah, that would be awesome, especially for the double crop bean yield. I think you could gain quite a bit there if it's not really dry.
Yeah, I've had experience with it. I think you have too. Wet wheat's kind of frustrating in the fact that you haul in 5 semi-loads and haul out 2 or 3, and it's just like where'd it go?
That's exactly what we did in the bin.
Where'd it go?
I was scooping the last bit. I'm like, did the bin leak? But no, definitely a lot of shrink in it for sure.
Right, but it was some of the highest quality wheat that your elevator saw that year.
Yep. Me, one other farmer and I had the best wheat because he kind of did the same thing. Yep.
So you don't got to worry about vomitoxin and aflatoxin. You don't got to worry about vomitoxin when you're pulling that wheat off early because you don't have quite the amount of time for infection. So this is probably going to be one of the last episodes that we talk about wheat for a little while. And I kind of wanted to pull out 2 different props here. Nolan, you have some in your little side pocket there, and I have one in mine. Talk just a little bit about what that nozzle does and why that nozzle is important to your wheat growing.
Sure. So this is what they call a stream cap. We used to apply our nitrogen just with a normal nozzle, like a flat fan nozzle, and we it was last year, we were going to put the nitrogen on very late because it was a very wet spring starting out. And so this has, I think there's 5 holes in it. You can get them in various sizes and hole sizes and hole numbers, depending on your sprayer gaps and gallons you want to run. But this will allow you to create less burn because there's literally, so if they're on the nozzle, if they're on the sprayer like this, the nozzles are facing backwards. They have streams coming out the back, so you don't have near the spray and the coverage on the wheat as you would with a normal nozzle, but you still get the nitrogen on late, and you can run more gallons than a normal flat fan nozzle.
Correct. So when they talk about spraying wheat a little bit later than where we are now, if you're talking, that May time frame, it's very easy. If you burn the wheat, there's a lot of studies out there that say you can lose 10 to 15 bushel by torching that wheat. So whether it be a nozzle cap, like what you have that's a 5-hole, or you're running a stream bar system like what I have here sitting in my hand, this is the direction for split applying nitrogen. And this is the direction that I would suggest all of our customers go, because when you own the sprayer and you have the equipment right there, it's just another, whether it be $10 or $20 between the 2 different products to get that nitrogen on without burning the wheat, because again, you're treating your wheat like you do your corn and your soybeans. More people are treating their wheat. They're trying to get the maximum return on investment out of it. And split applying nitrogen to affect your height, your tiller count, and your yield at the end of the day. Split applying nitrogen is a huge portion of that.
Just kind of a little side note, be careful on not putting like your growth regulators in with this kind of nozzle. That needs to be an actual spray application. So this is basically a nitrogen pass only. I mean, that's the only downfall. You can't throw in your other stuff with it.
Right. Well, and that's just no different than corn.
Absolutely.
You're out in the field multiple times per year to get that high yield that you're chasing.
So Nolan, what beans have been successful for you to plant in your area? I know you talked about the 3/8 your sweet spot, but how far you go either way from that?
Sure. So with our dealers and customers over here, we have a pretty good range. We have some trailings on the 2.8 range all the way up to the 4.0, our Austin. So, but most of the time we're 3.2 to 3.8. Our Kennedy has been, I know we talk about Kennedy all the time, but that's my #1 selling bean again this year, so, yep.
Give us a little bit of history about the Kennedy, Nolan. How much better is the Kennedy in your mind than even some of our other products? You had a field split. How much better is that Kennedy, do you think?
Anywhere from 5 to 10 bushel better. We had an older product in there, still a really great product, but Dad not accidentally, he had some Kennedys left over, so he planted them in that field, and they just keep yielding and yielding and yielding, and they're an old variety, so we'll keep hanging our hat on it until it runs out.
I think most folks would be interested to know that Nolan actually was one of the predecessors, I guess, of us kind of flip-flopping how the Kennedys got positioned. From the breeding notes, there was a direction that was good, but finding that last little gear, I guess you would say, that Nolan, and maybe it was this instance, found, hey, maybe we should look at changing these two products placement just a little bit more, and I think that was really instrumental in helping our growers pick up an extra 5 to 7 bushels on their operation.
I would completely agree with that.
So talking about Kennedys, when we're talking about placement, so you run kind of a gamut of environments. Have you seen Kennedys perform well in different environments, or have you seen maybe a sweet spot on that?
Yeah, so we I think when we first got the Kennedys, or Merschman Seeds brought the Kennedys on, we were kind of tailoring them to our lighter soil, and I think somehow we had them in the planter and we took them up to a better farm, and rather than mess around, empty the planter out, Dad just emptied it out by planting them, and turns out the Kennedys do extremely well on good soil. Maybe just watch out a little bit on wet feet, but that's when we decided that, man, we've got a lot of yield potential in these. So we started putting them on good ground. Really put them about anywhere from what we've seen. They just yield.
I completely can get behind that statement all the way around.
Didn't know that product had an overdrive, huh?
We did not at the time. We do now. Yes.
So we've talked about wheat. We've talked about 15-inch wheat in that aspect. We talked about soybeans a little bit. Is there anything that you're trying on the farm this year for the first time that you're excited to see something different?
Well, as far as not really a lot of things different in the soil or anything like that. As you can see behind us is our planter. We're adding a lot of gadgets to it. We'll see if that pays. We're trying, a few like pivot bio, kind of trying some of that stuff. Would really like to try to build my organic matter and get a few more bugs out there, I'll say, in the soil to keep us going. So,
pretty common theme. Everybody's trying a little bit of biologicals right now to figure out what's working versus what's not. So hopefully we get to talk to you after harvest and relook at that as well.
So Nolan, we thank you for inviting us over here and having a remote cup of Joe on location. As always, it's always nice to get over and see different scenery and see what guys are doing a little bit different in the countryside. So definitely appreciate you having us over and telling us a little bit about your operation and what you do for Merschman Seeds. And for those that are interested in West Central Illinois, Nolan's contact information will be on Cup of Joe here. So please get a hold of him. And with that, we'll kick it over to Joe with the corny joke of the week.
Well, thanks. Well, it's time for the corny joke. And I know I haven't been doing a very good job lately. So I put a little more effort into it. And I actually got a panel of 6 of my friends to review the jokes and give them a rubber stamp. I gave them like 6 different jokes and they picked the top 2. These are all ladies, okay? Okay, they're all friends of mine. They're ladies from high school, from back in the day. So anyhow, I can trust them and, this good stuff. So these are my wife jokes, okay? That's why I asked the ladies, okay? And these are the 2 that they picked, okay? My wife yelled at me from upstairs and asked, "Do you ever get a shooting pain across your body, like someone's got a voodoo doll and they are stabbing it?" I replied, "No." She responded, "How about now?" Okay, that was the number 2 pick. There was a little bit of decision on that, but that was the majority. But this one here, every one of them picked this one. Okay. So it's got to be a winner. I told my wife to embrace her mistakes. She gave me a hug.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I can see why they like that one. Tells you a little bit about personality of my friends too. So anyhow, all good, all good. Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We hope the information that we gave you today is beneficial for your farming operation. We hope you and your family are safe and healthy, and we'll see you next week.